I'd just like to talk to you about masking fluid. Now, I don't often use it. It's a fluid that you can use to stick on your paper, and it actually reserves the white. I usually paint around my highlights and my white areas, but if you're being quite experimental with some exciting washes, sometimes it's a good idea to actually reserve your light areas. I don't always leave them the white of the paper. I then may paint over them, but they still show up. So what is masking fluid? Masking fluid, it comes in different names: drawing gum, masking fluid. It's a natural latex that you apply to the paper, let it dry, and then it stops the paint going through. Now, an important thing about using masking fluid is don't have your watercolor brushes anywhere near it. It will really ruin your watercolor brushes. So have a little brush that you can reserve. This is a little nylon brush, and it's the tiniest one I could find with a really thin point. You could also use a pen or a stick, but I find sometimes with pens and sticks the latex becomes a bit blobby once you've dipped it in and does a huge blob on your paper where you don't really want to use it. So I find this little brush is a really good idea. And the way to prepare your little brush so that you don't, because it is really rubbery, is to wet your brush and then have a little bar of soap. I've got one of these little soaps that you get in a hotel, and I keep this little bar of soap with me, and I activate the soap. So I'm actually coating my brush with some soap first. Now I've poured some of my drawing gum into a little bottle here. I've dispensed it. It's easier. I can take this around with me when I travel. And this is blue, which is really useful. So I can dip it in, and you can start creating some little edges. I just want to show you here. Let me just rinse that off. I'm just showing you with a leaf. I don't know if you can see, but this leaf, some of the veins are actually lighter than the leaf itself. And it's quite nice to, when you're painting a whole lot of leaves and things like that, you can use masking fluid to indicate the veins. Now, I wouldn't sort of do exact lines. I would do little bits of lines here and there that sort of connect with each other. So let's have a go with that. So I'm just going to can you see the blue? So at least it shows up. Some masking fluid is the same color as the paper, and it's a bit awkward to see where you've actually masked. So careful you don't sort of get blobs. I'm just going to do little lines here. So I'm going to carry on making some little lines. Once you've finished drawing the lines that you want to, I've put a few in here and there, make sure your little brush is rinsed out very carefully. So make sure all that rubber is off it. Usually with the soap underneath, it's very easy to come off. And there you go. So then also put your lid on your latex, because it does dry very quickly. In this video we're going to use slightly different colors from the other tutorials. The other tutorials we've used a red, a blue and a yellow, and those are 3 primary colors. Primary colors are colors that can't be mixed from any other color. They can mix all sorts of colors themselves. But this time we're going to use another color scheme. The color scheme is called Analogous Colors. I'm going to use just these colors here, and they all will blend nicely with each other. It's a sort of, if you have a look at this leaf, we're going to use these colors. So it's a violet, a red, and a reddy sort of orange. I've taken out these paints. This paint is called Quinacridone Gold, and it's made by Winsor & Newton. And it is a sort of an orangey reddy color. If you can have a look on the palette here, there. So it's not like my aureolum, which I usually use, which is a bright yellow. And then I'm going to use my permanent Carmine again, which is Winsor & Newton. I'm going to use a sort of browny color, which is one of these colors here, a reddy brown. Most people will be using burnt sienna, but I'm trying out this transparent red iron oxide from M. Graham, which is very similar, if you can have a look here. but your burnt sienna will be fine for that. And then the other colour I'm using is called Dioxin Violet or Winsor Violet. Now this is a colour I would really recommend you actually invest in. It is amazing. When it's thinned out, it mixes beautifully with other colours and is so subtle, but if you use it thick, it makes these gorgeous darks. So this is a really good one to have if you're going to buy another paint, a tube of paint. I've made my puddles of colour, and I'm going to spray my paper with my water so that I get random wet and dry areas. And now I'm going to drop in my colour, various bits of colour, and I'm holding my board upright so that it drips down. And if you can see, I'm trying to encourage it to drip at a diagonal, in a diagonal fashion. Adding more and then spraying a bit more, adding stronger paint. Oh, that's lovely. Letting it mix on the paper. So I'm keeping the stronger colours in my centre area where the leaf is, and then I just sort of take a damp brush and take it off to the sides with a lesser layer of paint. There I go. Just to integrate the whole painting with the colours. Dropping in more paint and moving the board around so that it mixes on the paper. I wish it would stay like this, the way it is when it's wet. When it dries, it certainly doesn't do this, but we can try our best. There's always more room for experimentation. I think I'm going to let this dry now. So now it's dry, and of course it has lost some of that vibrancy, but we will work with this. I'm now doing a bit of negative painting, so I'm exaggerating the edge of the leaf. First with a thin wash of dioxazine purple. It's a lovely paint to do thin washes, but I'm going to drop in some darker paint right next to that edge of the leaf, and then let it sort of waft in a sort of a diluted way towards the edge of the paper. Soften it there. And then I'm softening some of the edges of the leaf while I'm going round, so I don't get that cut out look. Now I'm coming to that bottom edge there, or the top edge. I turn the paper around so you can see what I'm doing. Adding a little bit of dark there. And coming round into that red area, so I've taken another little bit of red because I like that red there, so I want to carry on with it. That's right, getting the nice shape of the leaf. Softening some of those edgy bits, but I'm not making them completely flat because I do want to have a sort of variegated look behind, as if there's other leaves behind. Softening some of the bits, some of the edges. That's fine. Now I need a little bit more darker red under there, under the leaf. While the paint is still wet, I can just drop it in. And I'm bringing some of it into the actual leaf to warm it up a little bit. And that's good. Yeah, I want to actually exaggerate that corner, that edge of the leaf there with that red again. Just add a bit more paint. It creates a little bit of drama. Now this layer's dried, and I'm now going to remove the masking fluid. I'm using a kneadable eraser. You can use any kind of eraser. You could use your fingers, but you sometimes get a bit of oil or grease on your finger and you don't want to transfer that onto the paper. It comes off quite easily. It's sort of like, it feels like a rubbery sort of consistency. There we go. So now you can see the potential of the masking fluid. It leaves quite hard edges, and you can now leave that as your highlights, but I'm actually going to put a wash over it to integrate it a bit more. And you think, oh, you're going to paint over it, but it actually still shows because the paint is transparent. So I'm just using a yellow, my Quin Gold, over the leaf, and then bringing it away from the leaf so that it integrates into the background as well. Otherwise you would get this crunchy edge if I just tried to paint the leaf on top, which I'm trying to avoid. So I'm bringing that gold colour over into the background in places. Right, I think that's okay. I've now decided that the left hand side needs a little bit more contrast, so I'm doing a bit more negative painting here with some red, just so I can bring out that top bit of the leaf. I'm not going to do too much to the bottom bit of the leaf, but just creating a little bit of contrast there. I'm going to add a little bit more stronger paint into it. That's it, so it makes the leaf show up more. And then just waft it off into the side. You can see the different layers of watercolour. Now I've decided to take my rigger and paint some little dark lines. I know we've got some light lines for the veins, but here and there just a few little dark lines to create contrast again. I'm going to try and make them subtle. I'm not going to draw lines everywhere, just a few little lines here and there, and then soften them. You can see the where the masking fluid was still. As you see, its watercolor is transparent and they are showing, but they're not quite as bright as just white paper. It's a more subtle look. I think I should stop now. It becomes addictive, isn't it? We want to keep going on. I think I've done enough lines now. And then I'm going to just soften some of them with my watercolor brush. They're still a bit damp. Now I'm looking at it and I think, oh, I want a little bit of light area, so I'm taking a watercolor brush, a flat watercolor brush, and just taking off some of the paint there to create a sort of lighter area. And so it's a damp brush, and then with your tissue you take off the paint. I think that's it. Here is the finished piece. I'm going to follow it with a demo of leaves and berries using the techniques we have just looked at.